On this demo, I'm going to demonstrate how to do the rotating limb project. This is just one approach. Here I used a rotating arm that I created based on one of the pictures I posted of the robotic arms in Canvas. And if I render this, when I render this, you can see there that I've created kind of a mechanical or robotic arm. Let's move the sun around here and see if we can get a better picture of it. Well, I'm in a weird place for it, so where the sun is. But you get the idea here. So it's got a wheel base. So if you think of this as an arm, this would be the torso, let's say, the midsection. Then we have the shoulder, of course. Then we have the bicep, the elbow here. Here's our forearm. This will be our wrist. Finally, down here is our hand. And in this case, we have a little magnetic hand that's going to pick up a magnetic rock, let's say, that has magnetic elements. But before we do any animation, of course, we have to make sure that this thing is rigged or linked properly. The linking process in Bryce is very simple and limited, but it's very simple and cool. And again, the principle is we want to link from the outside in. So we're going to link from the hand all the way into our base object, which is our wheelbase down here. So again, you want to start at the hand and end up in the middle somewhere in the torso of the body, which is down here in this case. And linking is super simple. You just click on your object, and the linking tool is just above the tracking tool on your toolbar here. I'm going to left click on the linking tool, hold the mouse button down, and drag my line to the next object. When it turns green, I let go. So now if I look at this object in attributes, you'll see that it's linked to the hand rotator above it. And I named these objects. It's easy. Once you have your object modeled, you can go to attributes under general, and you can name your objects. And I highly recommend that. It's much easier to find your objects if you know what they're called. So now that we've linked this to the hand rotator, I'm going to click on the hand rotator and link that to this would be the wrist rotator. So I'm going to again grab my link tool, just go up to the wrist rotator above it. When it turns green, let go. Same thing here. I'm going to link my wrist rotator here to my wrist. So I'm going to grab the link tool, go up, and drop that in. And you can check it here by going to attributes. And so here's my wrist rotator, and then linking. It says I linked it to the forearm, which is up here. That's not right. So I need to link this to my wrist, which is down here. So if you mess up or if you're having trouble linking it to the right object, remember you can also do it down here in the attributes bar. If you click on A, on linking, where it says object parent name, just click and hold the mouse button, or click the mouse button once, and find the object you want to link it to. So I'm going to change that to wrist. And that's done. Hit check. And now this thing should be linked to the wrist, which it is. That's good. Now I'm going to click on my wrist and link that to my forearm rotator right here. Okay. Now this forearm rotator is inside the wrist, so I'm going to have a hard time using the linking tool to select it. If you notice, watch, if I click the linking tool, notice it won't turn green at all. And if you click the link tool and you're not sure what to do with it, just drag it out to nowhere, and then that'll get rid of the link. So again, I'm going to go to A for attributes. Under linking, where it says object parent name, I'm going to find the forearm rotator. Okay, I'm going to have to go up here, just scroll up. Oh, there it is, forearm rotator. Check. Now I'm going to hold down control and click the forearm rotator and link that, of course, to my forearm. So under A for attributes, click under object parent name and find forearm. There it is. Check. Now I'm going to select my forearm, control, click, there's my forearm, and that's going to link to my elbow rotator. Okay, So again, I'm not going to be able to use the link tool because the elbow rotator is inside the forearm. So I'm going to go to Attributes. Under Object Parent Name, I'm looking for elbow rotator. There it is. Check. Hold down Control, click again. Elbow rotator is going to link to my bicep. Go to Attributes, or I could use the link tool. And boom, right there, it's linked to the elbow or the bicep. You can see it right there under Object Parent Name. So next I select my bicep, and I want to link the bicep to the shoulder rotator right here. So I'm going to Control click, hold down Control, click my shoulder rotator, or better yet, leave my bicep selected, excuse me. I'm going to leave the bicep selected, go to Attributes, under Object Parent Name, find shoulder rotator. There it is. Check. So now this shoulder rotator is going to link to this here, which is my shoulder. Okay. So let's go ahead and grab the shoulder rotator, Control, click on shoulder rotator, and we're going to link that to the shoulder now. Okay. So Attributes, under Linking, choose shoulder rotator, or shoulder, we're going to link that to the shoulder. Okay, just shoulder, check. Now I'm going to Control, click on shoulder, and I'm going to link that to the shoulder base joint, which is will be a rotating cylinder right here. Attributes, under Linking, shoulder base joint, done. Now I'm going to click on shoulder base joint and link that to my base, which is down here. I think that's base. Let's just double check. Yep, the base here. So go back, Control, click on my shoulder base joint, Attributes. I'm going to choose base for my link. Okay, check. Now I'm going to select my base, Control click. I'm going to link that to the wheelbase joint right there. Okay, so click on, base, Attributes, and under Object Parent Name, wheelbase joint. JT represents joint there. Now my wheelbase joint, of course, is going to link to my wheelbase down here. Okay, so Attributes, Object Parent Name, wheelbase. Check. Now everything should be linked from the hand all the way into the wheelbase joint. So if I need to move this object around before I start keyframing and animating, I would just grab it by the object that everything is linked into, which in this case is our wheelbase joint. And notice there I can move everything freely just by selecting that. If you accidentally try to move this selecting another object, let's say, okay, I just need to move this. Notice there it leaves some of it behind. Okay? Control Z. So make sure you're grabbing it by the object that everything is linked into eventually. In this case, I don't need to move it. I just want to get myself set up in the position that I need to be to start animating. Okay? But before I do that, there's the crucial step of turning off propagate size. And this is something that I emphasized in the other demo, and that is you cannot skip this step. If you do, you're going to run into problems with your animation. So the easiest way to turn off propagate size is to select your entire object that you're going to be animating, or objects. Just do this all at once. Select the whole thing. Now you're going to go up to Attributes. And under Linking, it says Propagate. Do you see that word Propagate there? There, all you have to do is uncheck Size. Just do this all in one shot here. Click Check, and now you're done. Okay, now you're ready to start keyframing and animating this object. Okay, and to double check it, I'll go to Attributes. And notice their size is deselected. Okay, so you're good to go. And now we'll start our animation. So let me zoom out here and I'll show you what I have going here. And notice there are some rocks over there. This rock over on the very far right, I'm going to have my robotic arm pick it up and carry it off the stage there. So I'm just going to zoom out extremely here so I can rotate on my trackball here over on my left. My camera trackball, I'm just going to use that to turn my view here. And again, I can zoom out even more to do this. The more you zoom out, the easier it is to see everything when you're getting your position right. That's going to look pretty good there. Now I'll just bring this over. Bring it in. And that's a good view right there. Maybe out a little bit more so we can see the path. That looks pretty good right there. So if I render this, you can see there's my rotating arm, and here are my rocks. So I'm going to pick up this one here, and let's make it a little larger too while we're at it. So I'm going to select this rock here, and I'm just going to expand it a little bit so you can see it a little better. That's better. Bring it down into the ground a little bit more. Make sure these things are sitting better in the ground. Perfect. That looks great. Okay, so another thing I want to change is my sun view so I can see things a little better. Make the light a little bit easier to see your objects. That's probably about as good as I can get it. Okay. All right, so now we're ready to start the keyframing process. I'm not sure where I had this before, but maybe if I bring this up a little bit and get a little more sun here, you can see a little color on it maybe. No, it's still not good. Not sure how to change that. That looks pretty good right there. All right, well, we'll live with that. Okay, so now I'm going to start the keyframing process here. Let me move this over just a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Zoom out a little bit more here. And let's turn this a little bit more. Okay, all right, so that looks pretty good right there. And let's go over here with it. And maybe that's probably good right there. Perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this happen here. Again, I'm going to start by animating the wheelbase. But before I even start animating, I've got to set up my animation. Now in the lower right hand corner of your Bryce window, you'll see a round circle with a grid inside of it. That's your palette toggle. That'll switch you between your modeling tools on the bottom of the screen and your animation tools. Here are your play control, your transport controls, and your keyframing tool here, of course. I can't do any animation on this until I set it up. So I'm going to go up to File, Animation Setup, or Control-Shift-N. And I'm going to set up my time here. Under duration here, I'm going to go to seconds. I'm going to change that to, I'm going to do 8 seconds. Okay, so all I need to enter is under seconds, enter 8. Disregard hours, minutes, or frames. Those should stay at 0. Seconds are 8. And again, at FPS, or frames per second, make sure that says 10 in there. That's the minimum frame count per second that you want to put in there. Okay? So we're going to do 80 frames here, 8 seconds at 10 frames a second. All right, so now we're ready to start our animation process. So what I'm going to do is make sure the auto key is on before I even start moving my scrub key and then animating my object. So again, over on the very lower right, next to the Motion Lab, you'll see a little arrow. That's your timeline option. Click that and make sure auto key is checked. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm ready to start keyframing, and auto key will fill in the rest for me. Control click on my wheelbase. I just want to move this entire thing over at this point. And again, let's rotate this a little bit more to start. I like that a little better, and then move over. That's better. I like that. Now I can zoom in a little more. All right, so here we go. So to start the keyframing process, lower left or lower right hand corner where the key is, make sure you click the plus sign to start it. Okay, the key will turn golden. And now we can start our animation here. So I'm going to go to a top view, move my scrub key. In fact, let's zoom out a little bit so we can see the object here. That's perfect. Okay, move my scrub key. Let's move it about, I don't know, maybe it takes 1 second. Let's try to get to this point. Okay, and now we can go up to our edit tools here, and I can just use my reposition tool there. And notice there that it's creating the motion path for me, maybe to about here. Okay, and then from this point on, we're going to maybe another second or so. I'm gonna just do this by hand at this point. So let me zoom in here. I'm just going to grab it and drag it to where I need it to be. So it's going to be probably, or let's zoom out. Make sure I'm at the correct rock. That looks good right there. Zoom back in and drag it over a little bit more. I want it to be pretty close to it, but not too close. About right there, maybe. Okay. All right. So I'm just getting my basic path down for the whole object here. So let's watch that and make sure we've got something going here. Okay. So it looks like it's working so far. Looks good. Now this is a little bit too curvy for me. I want to make it more angular. But I can do that here in just a second. So let's go up to top view again. Same thing. We're going to go out here, grab our scrub key, move to this point, and right here I'm going to create another extra keyframe. And what that'll do is make sure that this thing doesn't rotate when as far as it gets to here. Okay, so that extra keyframe will keep this whole thing straight, the wheelbase. Now from here to about here, we're going to rotate this whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to use my Y here. And that thing will have rotated about that far at this point. Maybe right there. Okay? Because of course this thing has to turn toward the rock. Okay? So there we got a turn. But notice how it's kind of a more smooth Bezier type curve. I want to make this a straight angle. I'm going to go up here just before this. Grab this key, or just hover over this keyframe and hold down T and left click my mouse button and then drag the mouse to make it more straight and angular. Notice there it's straightening it out to a nice straight angle. That's what I want. Okay. So here we go. And this thing is rotating. Perfect. Now, as you know, if you've been using Bryce, you know that it's a RAM hog. So make sure you're saving your project quite frequently. So I'm going to go up to File. I'm going to do a Save As and rename this. This is going to be 12- your last name, right? 12-Acker is what I'm going to name this. And I'll save this right back into my Assignment 12 folder on my desktop somewhere here. Okay, this is number 12. Rotating limb. Click Save. That way I don't mess with the original file. All right. So the next step is to figure out what other object we need to move on our arm. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go back to Director's View. I'm going to scrub through this real quick and just look at it. Okay. Perfect. It stops there. Once it stops there, then we'd probably have the wheelbase joint rotating. So I'm going to control click the wheelbase joint. Go back to the beginning of my timeline, hit rewind. Click plus again to start that animation process for the wheelbase joint. Again, we have to go through this multiple times, multiple passes to get this done. Okay, and drag my scrub key out. Make sure that wheelbase joint doesn't rotate to right here. So click plus again. And what that'll do is hold this wheelbase joint in that same position from the beginning to here. Now we're going to have the wheelbase joint rotate a little bit, maybe for about 7 frames, something like that. And we're just going to rotate on Y here. So I went to the Y axis here on the object, held down Control, and just rotated it on the Y axis. And it should be kind of aiming toward that rock right there. So I'm going to go up to a top view and look at it. Zoom in here a little bit. And that looks pretty good. It looks like it's on target. Maybe move it back a little bit if you're not sure. About right there is perfect. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Again, you can rewind back. Let's save it every time we do a new change. File, save. And let's see what we have so far. There it rolls in. And we got a rotation. Perfect. Okay. So the next thing, I'm going to grab my scrub key here. Again, be careful not to click on any of these frames. If you accidentally click a frame here down in the timeline, you're going to turn off all kinds of frames and it's going to screw up. Now watch here. Let me go up and change this to repeat so you can watch this. So if I go to File, Document, or Animation Setup, oh, repeat's already selected. Otherwise, you can select it down here. Just choose it to repeat so you can watch what's going on with your timeline down here. Watch what happens when I hit play. It goes from the first frame all the way over here because I accidentally turned off some of these frames down here by accidentally clicking on them. Notice there the scrub key will start here. When it gets to the end, it'll start where my cursor is right now. See that? You don't want to have that. You're going to have all kinds of problems and try to figure it out. To fix that problem, just go to the first keyframe, click on it, and let's see if that fixed it. It's either the first keyframe or the one that you turned off. Yeah, and that fixed it right there. Did you see how it started right here? So if you accidentally click off and turn off a bunch of keyframes, you can click on the very last or the first one, and it'll fix your timeline. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to stop that before I get a crash. Let's save that again. All right, so the next step is to figure out what other joint now are we going to be moving, or rotator. We've got this. Now that rotates. Probably the next thing we're going to do is the shoulder rotator, which is out here. So Control-click shoulder rotator. Go back to the beginning of your timeline. Click the plus sign next to the golden key. Just grab your scrub key. Drag it along, and the shoulder rotator will stay in that position till right here. Okay, plus sign again to keep it there. Now move your scrub key along a little bit more, and this thing is rotating out now. Okay, so again, I need to find the right axis point. It's definitely not Y, right? Click there. It's probably Z. And perfect. Z now is going down. It's either Z or X. Let's try X. Definitely not X. Let's check out here. Let's see if we go to Object Space and do this. This will be better. Okay, Z now is going the way it should. Now let's try X. Okay. That's rotating down, but in a weird way. So let's get rid of that. And let's try Y here. Y is what we want. Perfect. Okay. So Y is going to come down about that far, let's say. Probably going to be farther, actually. So let's just go ahead and do it. Y will probably come down about that far at this point. So if you notice too, when it's coming down, it's not even on the rock. So I'm going to have to reposition my wheelbase here. So what I need to do now is go back, Control, click on my wheelbase, and see that last keyframe? I need to get to that exact point. So let's go ahead and boom, right there. It's not that one, but maybe the one before it. And watch for this key to turn golden over here on the right. Once I get to that point. There it is. Do you see how that key turned golden here? That means I'm on the exact keyframe, and now all I have to do is move that keyframe over a little bit. So I'm going to go to a top view and just grab the wheelbase and move it to where it needs to be. Okay. Now let's go to director's view and see if we're in the right position. Okay, almost. What we could do is let's move the elbow joint and see if we're close. So I'm going to control click on the elbow rotator. Go back to the beginning of the timeline. You want to always do this. Make sure you're at the beginning when you start this process. Click plus to start it. Move your scrub key. And this is as this was rotating down. So the elbow rotator will be in that position till right there, I guess. So let's click plus sign. And then again, move this. Okay, and that goes about that far down. So we know how far we want to rotate this thing now. Just by simply, again, let's try Y and see if that's what we need. Y is good. Yeah, it's a good choice. Let's maybe to about there. Okay, so now I know that I need to move my wheelbase joint, that one keyframe, closer. So control click, go to wheelbase again. We're going to go back to that exact keyframe. There you can see it's rotating. And let's go one frame at a time here to make sure we get that exact, there it is. That's an exact keyframe we need. So again, go to a top view. And we're going to move this thing over a little bit until we can see that it's hitting the rock. Okay, so let's go back to director's view and see if we're hitting the mark here. Scrub it. And look at that. That looks pretty good. Now we can look at it from a top view to see where we need to adjust some of the rotation. Okay, so it's close, but probably could be out here a little bit more. So, again, going back to the wheelbase joint. Right there, again, we can move this thing over a little bit more and get even closer to where we need to be. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's render it. And that would work, I think. Okay, so we can go with that. Okay, hit escape there. And I don't even think we need to rotate the wrist, but we can do that later. And I think now we can start picking up the rock and going. So what this is going to do here is it's going to pick up the rock, and then we're going to keep going off screen. So at this point, we probably want to lift this thing up. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to start lifting the base, the shoulder rotator here. Sorry, shoulder rotator. Okay, so we're going to go back to that. We've been keyframing that. Here, that rotates down right there. We'll leave it in that position till about right there. Plus sign again. Okay, now we're going to pick this thing up in a few frames, right? So there, I'm going to rotate the shoulder. Let's try Y. I think we were on Y, and that the rock's going to follow it right there. And then we're going to go off screen with it. So now that I've done that, now I can just make the wheelbase go off screen, and then we'll fix the rock later. Okay, so there's my wheelbase. Wheelbase is there. We're going to click another keyframe to make sure it stays in that position till right here. So plus sign, you have to click that again so this wheelbase stays here at this position for this long. And now for the rest of the animation, we're going off screen with it. So I'll leave a few frames there so we can have a little room to keep going there. All right, so now I'm going to grab my, or I'm going to go to a top view, and I'm going to carry this thing off screen. Okay, so grab my position tool, wrong one, Control Z, probably X there, and we're going to exit off the stage. Let's see if we're there yet. And we're not quite there yet, so let's keep going here. X. Right there. Perfect. And in fact, we can even rotate this too. Let's go ahead and go to a top view. And let's grab this thing and move it over this way so we can see that it kind of went on a side path off the stage there. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So it's going to grab the rock, and then it's going to keep going right there. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll rotate the wheelbase joint too in the process. Okay? So again, we already have this thing keyframed, right? It does turn, but then it stays in that position, and we'll have it stay in that position till about right here. So plus sign again. And as this thing goes off the stage, this thing's going to rotate, I think, on Y. So let's go ahead and do on Y there. Just a little bit, not much. Maybe just enough to make it look like it's carrying it straight. Just to make it look convincing. There it goes, and then it does a little rotation right there. Okay? All right, so the next step now is to get the rock to do what we need it to do. This is the frustrating and hard part, but it's also fun once you get it done. Plus sign to start. Okay, we scroll over. The rock needs to stay in that position until right there. We're going to click plus again. And now this rock is going to have moved up to there at this point. So it has to be in that same position as the hook. So we're just going to go up with it. Again, I don't want to rotate it or create any problems like that. Okay, we're almost there. You can see it's not touching the hook here. So I'm just going to bring that up a little bit more. Or what you can do is rotate the rock a little bit. And then bring it up a little bit more. And let's just see if it looks like it's connected. Perfect. All right, so there's our rock attached to the arm here. And so what we're going to do now is, well, let's check it out. We're in the right position there, and then the rock comes up with it. That looks pretty good. And then it's going to take off with us right there. So plus sign to keep it in that position. Okay, now I think it'll be more effective if I do this from a top view. Zoom out so you can zoom in on your selection. Perfect. Now we'll go plus sign. Okay, and now from there, we already created our extra keyframe. So right there, the rock needs to be, well, let's go back and look at it. About there, let's say. Let's take a look at it, see where the position is. So it's a little behind the hook there. So we want to obviously at this point move this one over here. Keep scrubbing. And that looks pretty good. Let's go back a little bit more. Again, it should be kind of about right there. And this should be about right there. So I'm making adjustments each time I go through the pass here. Okay, and grab my scrub key. Grab my rock. And notice there, that's when it starts to rotate too. So the rock's going to have to go along with that. Right there. So we'll click another keyframe. Keep going here. About right there. We should be in about the same position. Let's zoom out. Keep going here. Should be about right there. Again, we'll zoom out here. About right there again. And about right there. And at this point, we probably won't even see it. But just to be sure, I'll add a few more keyframes here to the end here. So that would be the last one right there. Right there. So the rock will follow it all the way to the end, even though you're not going to see it. But let's take a look at it from a top view. But before we do that, let's save it in case we get a crash here. Okay? And again, let's zoom out and in so we can see the whole path here. Here we go. All right, so playing it. You can see it come in there, does its turn, grabs the rock, and goes off screen with it. That looks pretty good. I may be done. Let's see. Go to Director's View. Again, File, Save it if you're not sure if you saved it. And let's watch this thing and see how it looks. Okay, it picks it up. That looks pretty good. So once you get that done, then of course is the rendering process. So to render this, of course, you want to go up to File. We're going to go all the way down to Render Animation. Okay, you don't need to change anything up here. Just select entire duration if it's not selected. For your output module here, you're going to compress it. So click Edit and select a compressor up here. You don't want to do full frames uncompressed. And I am going to try an MPEG-4 Microsoft Video Codec. That sounds interesting. I've never used that. I can't change the quality of the compression on that at this point. I might be able to configure it. Oh yeah, I can right here. So if you go into configure, you can bump that up. I'm going to bump up the Christmas to 100% just to see what happens. Click OK, and I did that in configure. Click OK again. Now down here, I'm going to set my file location. This is where I'm going to save it. This is the file that you're going to send to me, so you want to make sure and name this correctly. I'm calling this 12 Acre, and that's my AVI movie that I'm using. So I'm going to just save this onto the desktop for now. So I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to click Check. And then what it's going to do now is render out my 80 frames. It says compressor error, image size or format may not be supported. Okay, so that's a problem. So let me select another compressor here. So File, Render Animation, and I probably want to save it out in using another one of the compressors here. So let's go ahead and select, I'm going to select Microsoft Video 1. Compression quality, I'm going to bump that up to 100 and see what happens. You can look, if you can look at, you can also go to the Microsoft Video Compressor and bump that up. I don't know if that'll make a difference, but click OK. And we're going to go here to 12 Acre desktop again. Click Save. Do I want to replace it? Yes. Check. And now you can see it's rendering it out frame by frame. Okay. So I'll come back here in a minute when this is done. And then I'll show you basically what you're going to be looking at or saving out and sending to me through Canvas. Finish rendering, and so I'm going to save this file. I'm just going to minimize this. I'm not going to close it. And I'm going to find my video, and here it is. Now, a lot of times on Windows 10, you might not be able to play it. I'll probably get an error message here. So I would use a VLC player, something like that, or Windows Media Player. I'm going to right click on it, choose Open With, and just choose my free VLC Media Player. VLC will play just about anything. And there you can see it's rotating. It's grabbing our object and going off stage. So it's perfect. We're done. And this is your file that you're going to turn in. So you're going to turn in your AVI file. And again, make sure you name it 12- your last name. And that's the file you want to attach and send to me through Canvas.